But when we talk about feelings, when we talk about emotions, I've been this week been a bit all over and trying to sort through what's going on. Like, what am I feeling? What's the energy out there? What am I picking up within myself, and what am I picking up from others? We moved into lockdown stage 2, which is good news slash bad news, depending how you look at it. Shuls are slowly reopening under ridiculous restrictions. Not ridiculous because they're bad, ridiculous because they take away so much of the shul experience. Is it good? Is it bad? And I remember something that we spoke about months ago, and that is the idea that most of us like black and white, and we don't like gray. Shut down, shut down. Fine, tell me to shut down. I don't like it, but I'll accept it. You start shutting down, half shutting down this level, that level. Most people abuse that. I was at the mall a few days ago to do some shopping. Nobody's wearing masks, almost nobody. People sitting, talking, chatting. We don't do well with the gray. We do very much well in the black and white. And I was thinking to myself, I was saying, as funny as it sounds, just like 6 months ago, I grieved the world that was. Now, I am grieving the fact that this is about to end. I'm going to miss this stage, believe it or not. I can't talk for anybody else, but I can talk for myself. I'm going to miss this stage. It was a stage of creativity and inner peace that I've never had in a very long time in my life. So much less stresses than usual. Yes, maybe, there's always the added stresses going on, but fundamentally, peace, time of teaching, creativity, time for myself. I'm going to miss this time, which is weird. And I'll tell you why, because 6 months ago, I thought that I missed the old world and I'm going to hate this world. And 6 months later, as slowly this world is semi coming to an end, obviously still going to be a lot of Zoom, etc. But from next week, I'm going to start working much more in the office, and there's going to be prayers every once in a while, a minyan here, a minyan there, then Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, etc. I'm going to miss this stage. And I was talking to a therapist, and she was saying that she's finding a lot of people are grieving again now, a similar process what they went through 6 months ago. And that is, we got used to a new comfort, a new normal. Some of us got more used to it. Some of us got less comfortable. Some of us struggled more than others during this time, each on their own boat. I'm going to miss this stage. I'm really going to. I'm going to miss the quieter mind, the part of the rabbinate where I just focused on what I enjoy, and that is teaching, engaging with people. I didn't have to build buildings. I didn't have to run the logistics of a Shabbos. I didn't have to run the logistics of a bar mitzvah. I was just able to be. And many people in their own role, in their own job, might say the same thing, just opportunity to be. In today's age, unless you go on holiday, you can't just be when you're in home. Until 6 months ago, being in Joburg means you're part of the rat race. It means you're just on the run. You're going, you're picking up, you're going to this, you're going to the hairdresser, you're going to book a flight, and you're going to visit this person, going to a hotel, and going to have a coffee, and whatever your life was surrounded, but it was a busy life. And now life is quieter, simpler. Just a few minutes ago, I was writing an article for the Jewish Report for Rosh Hashanah, and I was thinking about what to write. And ultimately, this idea came to me, this idea of, I'm going to miss the simplicity. It was a simpler life. You know what people talk about, and many people, many of the people on this group right now have mentioned to me, growing up in the 60s and 70s and riding your bike, and life was simple. Okay, there was no riding your bike this time. There was a lot of lockdown. But if you actually think about it, the last 6 months had more in common with your childhood in many ways than the past 50 years. And why is that? Obviously, there are certain things you couldn't go visit friends, etc. But our minds were quieter. There was less going on. And when the mind is quiet, it allows for other things to surface. Sometimes that's a bad thing. You know, I've found myself in the past 6 months thinking more about my break-in that Chai and I went through 2 years ago, over almost 2.5 years ago, more than ever before. Because now that my mind wasn't so busy as it was till now, busy with ideas, but not with stresses, I slowly started thinking a lot more about that break in, reliving it, thinking about it, even developing some of the fears, which I never had. Um, because that's what happens when your mind clears, certain things surface. Sometimes it's great thoughts and creativity, and sometimes it's trauma. I was talking to a family who lost a loved one years ago, and they said that the past 6 months have been the hardest because it's been much less busy and a lot of things have surfaced. So this has really been a time that a lot of the blockage in our life has been removed, and that has facilitated and that has allowed a lot of things to come to the front. Again, some of that stuff is good, some of the stuff is bad, but I would say that anything that surfaces fundamentally is good because it means it was something that had to be dealt with. It's not as if I had gotten over my trauma. If I had gotten over my trauma, then I wouldn't be thinking about it. It's just I never had enough time to focus on my trauma. And this time, my mind was empty enough or not as overwhelmed as usual, and things were able to surface. And, you know, when people have this imagination of the shtetl, what the shtetl was, it was such a peaceful time. Again, it's not true, but in theory, or the idyllic childhood in the 50s and 60s and maybe even the 70s, we got a taste of that these last 6 months. Yes, it was also financially difficult, as were 50, 60 years ago. Most people struggled more, financially more than they do today. Um, but it was simple. And I love simple. Simple is so peaceful. And that's one of the great gifts of Shabbat and why Shabbos for me is so important. It's because it's one day a week that I could just be simple. I don't have to be techie. I love my technology. I love the fact that I'm talking to you on Zoom, and I love the fact that I have WhatsApp and get to communicate. But it's 25 hours a week. No matter what happens, the world can come to an end. I live a life of simplicity. And that is a gift in our world. And by making that choice, I guess it's not a choice because I grew up with it, but by keeping Shabbos each week, I get to taste it, albeit for only 25 hours. Then it comes a Chag, I get to taste it for 48 hours. And especially in lockdown when I didn't see people on Shabbos, usually Shabbos is my most stressful day, but now I didn't see people. It was also beautiful, but stressful. So it's literally 25 hours, just me. And the kids, okay, fine, the kids, 6 of them. Thank God. That's peaceful. It's beautiful. It's refreshing. It's refreshing that God forces me to put my phone away because I can't force myself now. I mean, first of all, I don't even know if it was right. If let's say I decide right now to take my phone and drop it for 25 hours, I don't think it's right. People have to communicate. People want to have a connection, etc. Things have to happen. Could I be a little less on my phone? Perhaps. But 25 hours a week, God forces me, and I could blame the religion on it. So that's so convenient, by the way. And for those 25 hours that I'm off, I'm living a simple life. And I'm going to miss that about this time. Life was simpler. We were all much more equal. Yes, some people had more on the table, less. But as I said, nobody was driving their fancy cars around pretty much. Nobody was going on fancy holidays. Nobody's going on fancy cruises. And all that stuff is great. You have the money, spend it. Sei mir gesund, live life to the fullest. But to just live a simple life, the way people lived life 100 years ago, plus the technology, just at home, minimal going out, spending time, reading, reflecting, thinking. Isn't that beautiful? And that's why I say I'm going to miss this time. And I hope that I could integrate some of it in my new world, in whatever comes next, because next is a new stage that I've never lived through in my life, and neither have any of us. Next stage, which is COVID still for a long time, but with the world going on, is a new universe that I've never navigated. It's a whole new comfort zone. It's a whole new um, space that we've never walked through before. And we're going to have to walk through and actually get to know it, which is going to be quite different and strange. I was reading, my siblings live in Crown Heights, and they all got corona in March, Brooklyn, April. And now there's been a resurface of new cases in people already had it. It's much less, but they're actually one of the first experiments, because they were one of the first communities in the world, really, besides China and Italy, to get it. They had it 6 months ago, pretty much. Almost all my family had it, and some really suffered from it. And I've lost many loved ones, if you remember from the time, great uncles, etc. So, like, suddenly they're panicking because they're realizing that people in their community are starting to get COVID again, and they thought they had herd immunity. The point is that COVID has changed our world, and now we are slowly re-entering the world, because COVID's still here, but we have to re-enter. So first of all, we're entering a world that's very different than the world we left 6 months ago. It's like Noah on the flood. That's honestly what I feel like. I was actually reading a book. I bought my children a comic book from the Kollel bookshop, which is a story of Noah and the flood. The basic story you might remember from Torah class, and that is that 4,300 is 4,100 years ago, plus minus, the world had a flood, and nobody survived besides Noah and his family on a boat. Okay, you want to take the story, take the story. You don't want to take the story, don't take the story. But let's just accept the story as a story. And the story goes that after a year on the boat, Noah comes out and he's devastated. The world he left 12 months before is gone. It's gone. None of the familiar faces, nobody. And I remember reading in Rabbi Lau's book, I have it somewhere here, Out of the Depths. He describes that one time he went to meet a Yiddish poet who in the shtetl was a very successful poet, but then he moved to Israel and nobody really was into Yiddish. Everyone was learning Ivrit. So he didn't really make a name for himself post World War II, and he became a drunk. And Rabbi Lau and his father-in-law, who was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv at the time, Rabbi Frankel, they would go to visit him every once in a while. And one time he turns to them and he says, I feel like Noah after the flood. He was kind of justifying or explaining his drinking. Says, pre-Holocaust, I came from a world, a beautiful world. I had my shtetl, I had my friends, I had my social group, I had my this, I had my that. I go into the war, I go into the concentration camps, I come out. Where's my shtibel? Where's my home? Where's my friends? Where's my mother? Where's my siblings? Where's my family? Where's my friends? Gone. He says, I feel like Noah on the flood. And just like the story with Noah goes, that he came out and got himself drunk and then was violated by his son Ham, as the story goes. He says, I just feel like Noah. I just have to drown my sorrow in the drink. And I'm not saying that's what I plan on doing. I don't drink, thank God. But I get it. In some way, obviously, no one compares tragedies, and the Holocaust is incomparable to what we're going through. But that feeling of locking yourself up for a few months and then re-entering, and nothing's the same. I mean, we haven't even re-entered, but I could just feel it. Lots of people passed away. Older people are not coming out. I reached out to people if they want to come to a minyan. Pretty much my whole minyan was over 60, so nobody's coming. So I'm going to struggle to get a minyan during the week. I'm not going to encourage people over 60 to come. So suddenly, like, I'm going back. You see the building behind me. We had a beautiful building, had incredible, generous donors who invested millions in it. And now it's going to be a while till we could actually fill it with activity. We can't even have a youth service on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And I'm walking into this world, and in a way, I'm missing the boat. Obviously, I'm missing the world that was. Not that it was a perfect world, but I am missing it. But then for the last 6 months, I was in a boat. Noah's boat. Forgive the analogy, but for me, it feels accurate. And now we have to go out. The problem is there's still a bit of water. It hasn't fully, the flood hasn't fully succeeded there. But you have to go back into the world. Say in that tape, go out of the box, go out of your cave, as God tells Noah. First, he tells him, go into the cave before the flood. But after the flood, he says, get out of the cave, go out, start anew. And here we are, about to come out of an ark, and the world is different than the one we left. I feel like I left the world 6 months ago. Yes, I've seen a few people, I've done funerals, I've gone to the shops, but I've been in a different world, as has pretty much everybody I know, been in a different universe. And now we re-enter a very slow and strange re-entry. And no one knows how it will play out. We might have to go back into lockdown, as many societies like Israel, for example, have to go through. And I think that's why I started off by talking about feelings. I think it's important that we acknowledge the trauma of this. Big deal. It's a trauma to get into the ark, and it's a trauma to get out of the ark. The human being is a creature of habit. And believe it or not, at least I could talk for myself, I can't talk for anyone else. I've developed habits over the past 6 months. I sleep a little later than I used to sleep. I don't have to wake up at 5:15 every morning. And with a minyan restarting, readjusting and waking up an hour too early is going to be a challenge for me. Even, the last time I had to be sweet and greet a person, I don't greet people. I greet people on the screen, and nobody greets me back. I think I'm the shul with the least video participants on the planet, which pretty much means nobody. So I smile, this and that. I'm talking to the wall, or I'm talking with a background, and I'm talking into a screen. But I don't know. I haven't even had to follow social etiquette. I could walk around what they call the Zoom costume. The Zoom outfit. You wear a shirt, and under that you're just wearing your pajamas. No, I don't worry. But point is, I got used to this world. And now it's the next world. And as we go into this world, it's a whole new set of challenges for me. That it's almost going to be, I don't know if it's going to be as dramatic as going from pre-COVID to COVID, but it's going to be close. Because now it is pretty much everything's open. Yeah, but you can have, but you can't have. You could go to the restaurant, but you can't do this, but you could do this, but you can't do that. And people have to start making decisions. And then here's my predictions. I know I spoke on radio today that too many of us consider ourselves prophets, but I'm going to give a prediction. I'm going to say that it's going to cause a lot of social dynamics, because let's say your sister thinks that it's right to go visit family for Rosh Hashanah, and you think not. What happens then? Will both sides be forgiving? Why aren't you coming to me Rosh Hashanah? You came every year. I'm scared. Some people will understand. Some people won't. Till now, it was pretty much you could blame the law, but now that's in our own hands, and each one of us makes our decision. Will we judge each other's decision? Will we accept each other's decision? So yeah, I'll tell you straight out, if you don't want to come to Shul, you do come to Shul. I won't judge anybody. But I'm sure, the human being judges. I'm sure I'm going to find some moments that I'm going to judge somebody. Why did they go to my mother-in-law's house? Why did they go visit? Why did they do this? Why didn't they do this? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's a gray area, and each one of us is going to make our decisions based on our own intuition. It's going to cause dynamics. So the point is that it's a whole new set of rules. 6 months ago, if you would ask me what is the Zoom etiquette, I would have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't know what Zoom was, and I didn't know what etiquette is. No, I didn't know what Zoom etiquette is. Now there's a whole thing. You have to quiet the people, mute all. Don't allow them to unmute yourself. You could see when you go to a Zoom class if the teacher's done this before or not. Like when everyone's talking all over each other, you know, like, okay, you haven't spent enough time on Zoom. Let me give you some techniques, fella. It's called mute all. Do not allow them to unmute, you know, tricks of the trade, etc. The new world. And as we walk into the new world, it's new skills, new things that we'll have to develop, integrating the new and the old and a new universe. A universe where suddenly a handshake is so much more than a handshake. Think about it. Besides your immediate sibling, your spouse, your child, when was the last time you hugged somebody? I've said this before. I said the past 6 months, my community has become the most religious ever. They don't only not hug the other gender, they don't even hug their own gender. You know, like real from, like hardcore. Um, think about it. It's like that was second nature. You did it 5 times a week to the same person. If you went out and then you saw them and this and that, you hug, you greet people, nothing. Will a handshake ever be as it was? In many ways, it was cheap. You just gave a handshake. Can you imagine living for the day that one day I could actually shake someone's hand and I could actually look at them and see their face, not only on a screen, but in real life? So now, till now, we didn't see each other. We actually only saw each other on Zoom. So I saw you without a mask, you saw me without a mask. Now people are going to start coming out. We're going to greet each other with a bunch of masks. Socially distant. Don't greet the other person. Come on Rosh Hashanah to Shul. Say hello from 2 meters away. Don't engage with them. Don't talk to them. Gosh, the rules. 3 chairs between each person, by the way. Literally 2 meters on each side. Hectic. So what's my message? My message is to be scared? No, my message to me at least is to know what to expect. To acknowledge the fact that a stage is over and now is a new stage with its own whole new set of dynamics that we have to learn. And just like we made it through and we made some normalcy for ourselves within this world, we'll make normalcy for ourselves in that world. But for me, it was important today to acknowledge that a stage is over. As of Thursday, shuls are allowed to open. Stage 2, weddings can happen within a few weeks to up to 50 people with even a meal. Things are changing, things are different, things are more gray than they've ever been. Alcohol is being sold, cigarettes are being sold, etc. So remembering our own power of adaptability. You know, Noah, when he came out of the ark, he was 600 years old. According to the Torah, he lived till 950. So he was an old fogey, even in those days. Okay, not too old, but pretty old. And he couldn't adjust, and he went to the bottle. And Rabbi Lau writes in his book, he says, although I understood what this poet was talking about, I couldn't agree with him because I also came out of the Holocaust, says Rabbi Lau, and I decided to create a life for myself. To not just mourn the world that was, but to build the world that will be. So as we're grieving for our lives, which won't be the same for a while, and I think at the beginning of lockdown, people have a fantasy that it will be for a little while, then we'll go back to normal. I don't think any of us really appreciate that. First of all, the lockdown would last for so long, one of the longest in the world. And then, once we open, most people are going to stay in lockdown anyway because not much has changed in the world, and there's very few answers. So as we grieve the world that was, the world that we came from, we also acknowledge and look forward to new experiences. What will this Rosh Hashanah look like? It will be the strangest Rosh Hashanah of our life, without a doubt. But what will it be? What will, our holiday look like at the end of the year? What will exams look like? What will the year look like? Many people are calling this year the wasted year of our children's youth. I've seen it referenced a few times in articles, and I can't disagree more, because I think that it was one of the best years my children ever had, despite the fact that they didn't have socializing, etc. They got 6 months of mom and dad, quantity and quality time that life would have never afforded them. And that's a gift. I think it's a gift to a child. It's a gift that most children had until 100, 150 years ago. Before people went to school, you spent most time with your mom and dad, or at least one parent. And now they got to spend time with their parents. I think it was actually a great year. So I don't think this has been a wasted year. Like when I see all the memes going out, if 2020 was toilet paper, that was the meme that I saw this morning. That's the most recent one. So I'll share it just because, put a smile on your face. Okay. Here it goes. Share screen. Right? And pretty much that's what every other meme I've been receiving is like, like 2020 is a waste of a year. If it was a cake, it looks like a pancake. If it looks like bread, it would look like a matzah. Basically, it was a disaster of a year. And I'm saying no. It's been a very different year, very different. The first half of the year, and now the second half of the year is going to be even more different in different ways. And we'll be okay. We'll be okay. We will find a way to mourn our old lives, embrace the new life, mourn the life that we're saying goodbye to, embrace a new one. And that's the way we grow and adapt. But as a guy, I really feel it's so important that we acknowledge that feeling. Like, because yesterday, Monday, I was actually feeling very down in the beginning of the day. And only when I spoke to somebody did they help me articulate, I'm actually grieving. I'm grieving the end of this. I don't want this to end. There's a part of me that says, like, this is lovely. Yes, I know people are suffering, and on their behalf, I hope it ends. But for me personally, it's been a great time. It really has. And I know many people would agree with me. Not everybody, because again, a lot of people have struggled. They've lost jobs. They've lost loved ones. But I've spoken to quite a few people who actually have really enjoyed this time. If they happen to live at home with somebody, they enjoy their company. Some people just happen to be stuck with somebody whose company they don't enjoy, and they have to bear the people they love. But some of us like the people we love. Some of us didn't have to struggle too bad financially. Some of us didn't lose loved ones during this stage. Some people have actually had a very good time. And as we enter the new year, as we go into the month of Elul, tomorrow night's Rosh Chodesh, we start a new month. We count down 4.5 weeks to Rosh Hashanah. I pray that I learned the lessons that this year was here to teach me, because this year had incredible lessons. I'm not sure if I picked them up. I hope I picked up some of them. I hope that I've discovered within myself and within others that the human being is more flexible than they give themselves credit to, that we are adaptable, and that we can do with less and still be happy, without our schmancy holidays, without our schmancy cars, whatever, without our, traveling all over the world. I never thought that I would enjoy a bar mitzvah over Zoom, and yet I have. I've never thought that Shiva over Zoom in some ways, not many, but some ways, is more meaningful than real Shiva. That many people have told me that if they have to lose a loved one, they're still going to have Zoom Shivas after this. These are stuff the world would have never figured out. And we've realized that we can suddenly be all together internationally on Zooms, or, just engaging. I've discovered my community loves learning much more than I thought it does. The average talk, thank God, these days have between 120 and 220 views. Thank God. So what have you discovered these last 6 months? What are you going to miss of this time? And what strength are we going to have to dig in for the next stage, which pretty much this next stage is from now till the vaccine comes out. And who knows how long that is. It's more indefinite than when we went into lockdown. Lockdown, at least we thought we knew that's going to be a month or 2 or 3. Now we have no idea. Vaccine early 21, late 2021, later, nobody knows. Now we're entering the next stage, living with the pandemic, not avoiding it. And it's a whole new set of lessons to be learned. And I hope that together we can explore the lessons of this new stage just like we explored some of the lessons of the previous stage. Because I believe each moment of our life is a classroom. Each moment of our life, God's telling me something, the world is telling me something. I'm in a classroom and I have a lesson to learn. And I would say that just before we wrap up this stage, to make sure that we squeeze out of it as much as we can the lessons, the moments, the understanding of ourselves that we had over the past 6 months. Because please God, this will never happen again. But once it happened, forgive me for saying, I'm grateful it did. Shkoyach, everybody. Thank you so much. God bless you.